Let's turn now to Ivan Eland. He is the director of the Center on Peace and Liberty at the Independent Institute and joins me from Washington, D.C. Ivan, NATO leaders approved major increases of the alliance's forces in Eastern Europe. How can these Western alliances continue to maintain unity and support Ukraine without directly engaging with Russia and creating a wider conflict?
Well, of course, that's the balancing act that all the countries are facing. Turkey is facing it too, as you mentioned. It condemned the invasion, but is standing by in case mediation is needed and is already trying to mediate the conflict. So I think every country, excuse me, in NATO has to reach their own balance of what they can do and what they're willing to do. It seems like the alliance is very unified at the current time, and maybe too much so, because I don't have any problem with them giving or selling the Ukrainians planes or even air defense, ground-based air defenses. But I think, putting more troops there, and I realize the member countries like Poland, the Baltics, et cetera, Romania, they all want more troops and equipment in their countries because they're now scared of Russia. I don't think Russia is going to willingly go farther, since they're not doing very well. They're already bogged down in Ukraine, but one never knows. By an accidental shell going into Poland or something like that, people getting killed, accidental escalation can happen, and that's even more true when you put more forces up there. And Russia may think that the NATO is trying to take advantage of the fact that they are bogged down in Ukraine. So NATO has to be very careful when doing this, and I'm afraid these temporary deployments are very likely, of course, to become permanent.
As far as showing a unified front, I know that's really important for these Western alliances, but are there any cracks potentially in NATO that the Kremlin might still be able to exploit?
Well, I think the energy exports that Russia has are very vital to Europe, and they're not going to be able to get independent of Russian energy, in a short time. I know the U.S. is trying to help by sending liquid natural gas to Britain, and then Britain is going to send it to the continent. But that's pretty high-priced gas at this point compared to the stuff going by pipeline from Russia. So that's an example of where I think that the big crack is going to be in the energy sector.
What about ways that the Western alliance can put more pressure on Putin? And do you think that these sanctions we've seen so far are making any difference?
Well, I studied economic sanction when I was in graduate school in detail, and sanctions are good for putting economic pressure on countries, and that's certainly happening with Russia. But the problem with economic sanctions is it's an economic tool to achieve a political end, and that's often very difficult, especially for major changes of policy in the target country. And this would be, to have Russia withdraw from Ukraine, that would be a major change. The sanctions can achieve symbolic return goals and also smaller goals, but this is pretty big. They could put economic pressure, and I wouldn't say it wouldn't be a factor, but I don't think it's going to be decisive. I think Putin seems to be very content that he's not going to lose face by any sort of defeat here, which is, unfortunately, he may escalate, and that's the real problem that NATO is facing. And I think that's one of the reasons for the meeting was, what if he uses chemical weapons? What if he even uses a tactical nuclear weapon because he's frustrated and he's desperate to change the outcome of the war, which right now, time is on the Ukrainian side. They can eventually, even if they lose the cities, they can fight a dogged guerrilla warfare against them. So it's not looking good for Russia, and their forces are profoundly failing in almost every military aspect. So, that's the problem. What's going to happen if Putin doesn't give up on this failed venture?
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Ivan Eland joining us in Washington. Thank you.